This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, I asked Joey about the bowl generation.
Woo! Oh, Champs-Elysees. This is what a Joey sounds like, because I don't remember any of the other words. And I'm back from vacation, and this is what an executive producer, and beret wearer Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. Welcome back.
Do you own a beret?
At a time, yes. Presently, no.
I don't really know how I feel about berets. I think they have like a cultural connotation through like media of like that they would, like people in the US, if you would wear them, are like pretentious or something like that. But I don't have any like outside of media connotation. I don't know that I've encountered many people actually wearing them in real life.
What I really love about the beret is the way it folds. Most other hats fold on what can only be described as like the y-axis, but a beret folds on the z-axis, or like whatever. What is that? Like it sits on itself, and I just think that is what a silly, interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of it in terms of, is it intended to keep your head warm at all, or is it purely a fashion statement? Unclear.
It depends on the way it's sitting. In some ways, I consider it more like a yarmulke.
Or a fascinator, a wool fascinator.
Yeah, right. It's sort of more of like a sitting askance kind of a thing. I'm motioning in our
in
our
quite
video.
an askance manner. Well, we did it. We that concludes Hat Corner. This week's Hat Corner.
The other piece of housekeeping. How was your talk?
It was good. I think, I feel it concluded, and I did not fall down on stage. So, I think, with the nature of public speaking in big rooms and maybe who I am as a person, you sort of like walk away being like, well, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better, or, but I was sort of forced to watch it back ahead of us, like sharing it online, and I felt better about it than I thought I would. Is that like a fair answer?
Yeah. For those who don't know, Joey gave a talk at this year's Web Summit in Rio a couple weeks back, and you can listen to his talk, Frozen in the Face of Tech, which he felt better about having listened to in the aftermath, on YouTube and a few other places. We'll add it to the show notes. But I'm glad that you feel that way. I am sure many people, especially in the face of such a giant public speaking, not just public speaking, but like capital P public speaking, maybe everything is a blur until you're like, did I do it? After the fact, you walk off the stage, you're like, did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Did I just black out? Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things where you're just like, well, this, we'll see how this goes. I think that it maybe is like my orientation to like sort of most stressful scenarios is just like, well, I guess I'm just going to go do this. But, like it could go good or it could go bad, but we'll find out, like try not that I, didn't have any sort of like elevated state ahead of going on stage. I was just like, well, I'll do this now, and then after that, I will do whatever I have to do after that. So that mindset, I think, is probably helpful.
That's great.
Well, Jessica, now that the house is clean, and thank you for mentioning that talk at Web Summit Rio. What do you want to talk about today? I heard you have a polarizing food opinion, which invariably I probably will not agree with.
Yeah, typical.
Classic.
I'm here to talk about bowls. Um, I'm here to talk about bowls because I self-identify as being part of a new thing that I'm coining, the bowl generation. I feel like I grew up in the generation of bowl meals, where sort of like to help ground you in the States, fast casual chain Chipotle, you come up to the counter and they're like they've got a spread of various ingredients and you just get them piled in together. You choose the like dealer's choice, just like, yeah, sure, give me that. You want guac? Are you a big spender? Sure, top it off. Because also I guess it coincides with the generation of avocado. But then then all of that sort of just becomes amassed in a bowl, and then the spoon becomes like the primary uh, utensil vehicle. Yeah, exactly, to transport food to mouth. And it got me thinking about, how this also is sort of coinciding with the expansion of what the concept of American food is like, right? Like this sort of uh, eating experience was also maybe growing in tandem with new tastes and flavors to the States anyway, popping up all over the place, where now you can have bowl in the form of Mexican-inspired food, Mediterranean-inspired food, Chinese-inspired food, and that itself, all of those are broad strokes, generalized cuisines. But anyway, that sort of format and style of eating was such a thing, and I realized last week talking to some of my teammates, I was like, I think this has infiltrated the way that I just choose to eat things in general. When I go to lunch, I grab myself a bowl first and a spoon instead of a plate. And basically in my head, I'm like, oh, between a bowl, a spoon, and chopsticks, I'm pretty sure I can eat any food. And I realize that this is not necessarily the way that other people feel about things, but certainly maybe not the way, the present generation is eating. And it just got me wondering, how are we using bowls?
There's a lot in here. There's a lot piled into this bowl. We
Into
got
this
like
bowl?
I
Wait, actually,
so
before you start, because I need to hear many different things, but I just want to say to start here with like the type of bowl also matters. Like it's gotta be like wide and shallowish enough that you can fit all of these things onto it. And so I just wanted everyone to be imagining the same bowl with me. Like picture big, shallowish bowl containing many, many things. Continue.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I was gonna say is like first, I am like plate and fork guy for sure. Like
Anti-bowl?
even to
The
an
plate
extreme.
generation.
Yeah, even to an extreme in that like pizza or burrito or things like that. Like I still enjoy eating with a fork and a knife. Maybe like not exclusively, or it's not like a weird thing of like this is the way you do it. It's just like left to my own devices, I would probably choose that approach. And like with pizza, it's also like the first two like hot slices, I'll go that way, and then maybe I will like transition to the handhold method. So state that first. That's where my position as an individual. But there's also definitely like obviously a huge cultural component to it, right? Like your mom is Chinese, like Asian culture, like is more oriented in that direction, not like unilaterally, but right, Korean food, things like bibimbap or that is like very like bowl, like mix all the ingredients together, and it's not exclusive to Asia either. Like things in the Middle East or in Africa also sort of have that orientation, different things in different places like I'm gonna forget the name of it, so I'm not gonna attempt to try. But and like I didn't own those kind of big bowls growing up. We got them when I started living with my wife, who is like American, but from like Asian cultural heritage. So then like I was like, why do we have two different types of bowls? Like this is not where
Like,
did this bowl
whoa.
come from and what do you use it for? Like
I mean, a lover of the show, many time listener, Aunt Kathy, as of several years ago, had no bowls in her house. And upon discovering this, immediately my father and I conspired to get her some because we were just like, this cannot be. This is like, how do you eat anything? And once she had the bowl, she was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't even know what I was missing without these bowls. It's fascinating to think of, to me, like you're right. To me, I'm like, well, you have to have a bowl. How else are you going to eat most of your food when not everyone not everyone either grew up with that or lives like that. It also reminds me growing up, a dear friend of mine, Martina Van Wieren, was like the one kid in high school who would like even eat French fries with a fork and a knife. We would like make fun of her, but she's Dutch, and she's like, yeah, look, what am I gonna say? You just do it. You don't touch it with your fingers.
this is
That's
where I'm
what-
coming from.
this
Meet
is
me
where I
where
come
I'm at.
from.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it is like the thing that I don't necessarily like in all instances is the food mixing more than like the delivery vessel and mechanisms. So like, putting so like we eat like spaghetti on a plate and pasta on a plate and things like that. And like, in hindsight, like bowl better vessel for like a lot of those things. But that's not that's not how we did it growing up. So like the diversification of delivery methods, great. But like in those instances, right, where like a pasta that has an integrated sauce and there's like a blended flavor profile, great. But like I will mix my foods at my like own ratios to like have it be right, but I don't want them pre-mixed.
So here's what I it's interesting that you say that because I know that there are many textural sensitivities of different folks. But it also there's another aspect of this around taste that interests me because something that bowl meal sort of enforces is that there is a blending, there is a merging of different flavors together. And even if at fast casual spot Kava, they are scooping several sauces into different sides of the bowl, inevitably they come together. And it makes me start to wonder, like, is there now a large swath of population that is worse at identifying specific tastes
Mm.
because they are now harder to pull apart rather than the time in lives where American food traditionally had separated zones on a dinner plate? Like, I don't know. I wonder if we're worse at tasting and knowing what flavors we're experiencing.
Yeah, I think like that is the part that I just don't like, right? Where it's like everything becomes one flavor. And I think like it
Merging.
not you maybe there are cultures around the world where that is sort of broadly the orientation and I don't know them for sure, but the like in thinking about like Korean food as an example, there are many like mixed ingredient things, but like they're sort of placed all in like smaller bowls where you will sort of like tap into these varied flavors like across one meal, but they can be experienced individually, like mixed and matched and so on and so forth. And I think other cultures have that too. And then, this like QSR nature of what we're talking, like quick serve restaurant example of like Chopped and Sweet Green and Chipotle and wherever else where it's like just like smush it all
Smush into
together.
one. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because even like back to the other piece around like Asian cultures, for example, like even at in like a Korean meal with banchan, those smaller dishes of all varying types of pickles, those are all served independently, right? Like they're
Yep.
preserved in their textural puddles, flavor spaces on their own. Or same with Japanese food, like a Japanese breakfast, right? It's like it's many smaller
A
bowls and
bento box
containers.
has demarcation. Right.
Perfect example. Right. And so it's interesting this maybe again like uniquely new American construct of like, what if it all wants to be for efficiency's sake in one
Yeah.
space?
Well, I mean, I guess like Indian food is quite similar, right? Like even the containers
The
that
tiffin,
like,
right?
yeah, that are, you'll stack several, and those
Mm-hmm.
things are sort of like in that. I don't know what we would call like the broader categorical thing of like
Of
stew like things from.
compartmentalizing,
Well,
right?
yeah, like I mean more of like what do you call? I like as an American, I'm turning to like stew as the like category of thing, right? Where there's
Yeah.
like there's chunks of meat, chunks of vegetable, but it is like heavily sauced, so there's quite a lot of liquid. But those are
Yes.
still, even if it is like many stew-like things, they're
Yes.
like separated. So you're like biryani
Yes.
is not mixed with your curry or whatever. Um, and so yeah, I just don't like that blending of everything into like one sort of, random random. It's like when you would go to get like a slushie or something and you did like the graveyard or whatever, different people called it different things, but it's just like a little slushie off of each one and it turns like a brown purple color, and you're just like,
Wait, off of
it
each
tastes
one,
like
what?
all of them. Like if there's like 5 slushy flavors and you just put like
Oh, yes.
equal parts of each flavor together, and it's like it doesn't really taste like anything now. It tastes like everything, so it tastes like nothing.
Yeah, I mean, besides the merging of different textures, yes, it also just creates confusing flavors. It reminds me similarly of how, when training to be a sommelier, you might get that library of scents where each individual tasting note is distilled into one small vial of just that thing alone, so that you can practice, this is what grass smells like versus cherry versus strawberry, which are both red fruits but are distinct when you smell them. And ideally, you can train to identify them distinctly, even when they are then merged together in one glass of wine.
That's like super interesting because it's making me think about, right, there, like the sort of swings and like responses of how sort of like higher cuisine inevitably becomes a response to what sort of everyday cuisine is like, and how chefs will do the responses, right? And so like at different points people have done these sort of like deconstructed things as a way of like giving you those individual flavors. I don't, I'm not a like foodie or like, like Epicurean enough to know like where we would be sitting right now within like high end like cuisine or cookery. Like I don't even like have all of the language to be able to describe what that is. But I think like if our everyday and like quick serve restaurant culture is like going towards like the mushing of flavors, like will that put it into like the deconstructed version? And also additional question for you is, how does this all fit within the cube rule?
Oh, good me. For those unacquainted, the cube rule of foods is this detestable but attempting to be humorous. Maybe I'm throwing daggers. I don't need to do that. I'm sorry. It's delightful. The cube rule of foods is this idea that based on the different faces of a cube that are solid or empty, that determines the like it can categorize all foods into one of 6 possible things. If the bottom face is solid and none other, that's a toast. If the top and the bottom of parallel sides of the cube are solid, that's a sandwich. If those two are connected by one solid face, a taco, and so on and so forth. The problem is I don't really believe in the designations. I personally ascribe to the school of soup, salad, or sandwich, or if you insist, adding steak to the list. But I think soup, salad, steak, and sandwich probably cover all the ground. I don't understand the need for sushi, as is distinguished in the cube rule of foods.
Well, then is sushi a sandwich then?
Right. Similarly, taco might be sandwich. Like why those need to be distinguished, it's not obvious to me. And in fact, the distinction between soup and salad matters much more. But let us go back to the original question, which honestly escapes me because
it was about like the deconstruction versus like fully mushed.
Yes, full mush. Yeah, it does. It is interesting. I also, I know that, there are certain, signals of a professional cook that pays particular attention to mush avoidance, even if things ultimately find their way back home together in the end. Like, even if you're making a stew, you might still cook some, or a curry is a great example. In certain cuisines, you will cook the vegetables or poach them separately. You will not merge them with the curry until later, until they have already been cooked. And that's to create more distinction, contrast, and nuance other than everything tasting the same, which makes sense. In some ways, it's like maybe objectively more interesting to the palate to have more different things that feel discernibly different.
Yeah, I think like the ratios also is a component, and I'm thinking about Alana, who is a friend of the pod, has been on the show in the past, is like I think a big proponent of the bowl meal in at least as far as you would talk about salads. I know at that much. And she has a somewhat expansive view of what a salad is, but her entire philosophy around it is around like landing on golden ratios of like crunch and chew and like dressed to the appropriate volume, right? Where for her it is about like that each bite can have the ideal ratio of everything, and so she searches for ingredients based on those types of things. And so like in bowl culture, what are we calling this thing? Like it feels like if you go full mush, obviously that's not great unless that is sort of the intended goal, like the ratios. And if thinking about something like I don't eat from Sweetgreen, and I would not order a bowl from Chipotle, so you tell me. But like, are they thinking about the ratios appropriately in making those things? Or are they just being like, we have a scoop, it is the same size. You get one equal size scoop of all of these things, and it's based on like cost per volume of each of these ingredients,
Yeah, I mean, I think the froyo shops of yore, where everything is costed according to density, and then all of a sudden you're optimizing for whipped cream instead of cookie dough bites as a topping. It's a whole complicated mess. I do think that sort of the champions of bowl in our present times definitely think about ratios, because if they didn't, people, I don't think, would keep coming back, because we as consumers can appreciate the importance of texture as an aspect of food, of the look, and like the visual. Like, is it appealing? If it's all one thing together, it doesn't look appetizing. But if you have a mixture of colors and a balance of different sizes and shapes of things, that's going to be more compelling. And flavor wise, I do think that from my own ethnographic study of one, I do think there is an attempt to try to put different things in different parts of a bowl, even just to create some kind of distinction so that the bites are somewhat changed depending on how you eat it. That's
Yeah.
not true of all of these locations. Sometimes they'll be like, "Look, I did it," and then I'll toss it for you, and all of a sudden it becomes combined in the end. Or if you've ever seen this, I've witnessed some people who get a Chipotle bowl and they'll just shake the whole thing, like
Yeah.
just convert it into like a fully dressed salad. And I admit, like, if you start to think about it like a salad, all of Alana's rules of how to make a good salad, like consider the crunch, consider the dressing, like you got to get all of these different flavors balanced. I don't know. I don't mind it, but does that mean all we're eating is salads for every meal? Maybe that's a stretch too far, even for me,
Yeah.
a bowl person.
As the non-bowl person, like I feel like I'm having like all these judgy thoughts about bowls. I'm just like, choose your own slop, like that's in my head, like where it's deconstructed and you put it on different parts and you can like each bite could be like something a little different or whatever, like great. But like the shaken up version is like, or do you do the shaken up version halfway through once you've like deconstructed and now we're going to, yeah, I don't know.
Here is my personal pitch for you, is something that you alluded to earlier, which is that there are multiple sizes of bowl. And in this universe, wherein all you need are bowls, spoons, and chopsticks, you can have a tremendous variety of bowl sizes. Because in fact, what if you just have it may be that my ideal meal is like 40 small bowls of separate things. just to experience that variety and combine them as I choose, but that I am in that driver's seat of what gets combined. And for that, you cannot blame the bowl. In fact, you might be empowered by the bowl.
I'm just realizing too, you're totally right. Bowls aren't, also maybe not new. We just called bowl meal different things in the past because I grew up with a fair amount of casseroles, as I'm sure like many Americans of a certain age and geography also grew up with. And a casserole is just a bowl meal in a
flat bowl meal.
Yeah, in some kind of baking dish that we still ate on a plate, but it is still bowl meal. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm like a pro casserole, so I will just say that, but I will say that maybe I did grow up eating bowl meal and not realize it.
Yeah, and if nothing else, I mean, the practicality of having a rim to push the things onto, it's just more effective for scooping. You know what I mean?
Not no. Well, Jessica, do you want to bring us to our assembly line corner wherein you fill the bowl of wrapping this up with all of the appropriate ratios of what we've learned today?
I feel like I have maybe made some progress in spreading the bowl gospel. I also think, though, we have interrogated some of the drawbacks and potentially, less glamorous sides of bowl consumption. But also the concept that all of these different methods and formats and approaches to eating can be passed down and maybe can even be changed and inspired by other folks who have a different way of doing things. And perhaps certain foods can even be more enjoyed by experiencing them in the way they are meant to be experienced. So open your mind. Get some more bowls.
Yeah. At the bare minimum, buy yourself some of those big bowls, whatever they're called.
I mean, it depends on what shape. I mean, wow. There are don't even get me started.
I just opened a bowl of worms. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Big Bowl. You got it? I can take it.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and flatware aficionado, Jess Vander.
You're welcome. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and warm homie casserole Alex Conte.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and ramekin of my heart, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our plate spinners and production crew, Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thanks.
Special thanks. Like, do we thank ramekins? I think. Ramekins? Yeah, why not?
You know why? Because those edges are what allow for height to happen when baking souffles. Souffles. We'd also, I personally have to thank two influential bowl people in my life. And that would be Katie Sadow, also friend of the pod, and friend Maggie Ercolani for all of their bowl wisdom and recommendation giving to me on my lifelong search for the perfect bowl.
Wow. The lifelong search. I hope you find it. I hope you find the perfect bowl.
The truth is, here's the secret, right? There's actually no one perfect bowl. There actually are. You must have like at least 4 different shapes and sizes.
There's a right bowl for every meal. That's what I always say. It's age-old wisdom, as my grandmother once said.
In the old adage, there's the right bowl for every meal.
And sometimes you have to just, drink out of your own bowl, run your own race, paddle your own canoe. That's what we say around here. We don't say that.
Bowl sounds really alarming. Actually, I don't know why. I don't know if I like that. I mean, don't really drink out of someone else's bowl either. Just like
yeah. Don't do it. Well, we did it. Love you. Mean it. Bye.
Cool. Thanks. Bye. Bowl, 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 bowl. Okay, that's it.